Hey friends, welcome back for another episode of Gone Gwenting. Today we're going to cover another basic of the game, and that is how to build or modify decks. Now in my opinion, this is the most fun part of the game, especially as it relates to playing further games. So essentially what you're going to do here is you're going to tweak some of the cards that you have in those starter decks. And I'm going to show you just which ones to do. So, you can always claim your contracts in the top right. Always make sure to do that. Sometimes they have some errors a little bit right now. There's a hot fix that's coming out the next day. But anyway, sometimes you really want to think about some of the cards that are dead weight in your deck. And my last video, we talked about some new cards that you could get when you go to that reward book by clicking on the keys. You go to the second tab, the Year of the Wild Boar. You click on Year of the Wild Boar, and then you want to get each of these three nodes right here: Lambert, Vesemir, and Eskel. And then what you're going to do, you're going to go and you're going to buy a few kegs. You go to your ore, you buy some of these kegs right here. I know last time I told you to focus on some of these expansions. I'm going to revise some of my suggestion to you. If you want to be competitive, you want to move your way up in the ranks really quickly. If I was working with another friend on this, it might be smart actually to get some faction-based kegs in the very early game. I want you to focus on just one faction to get up and going, get some competitive cards, and then quickly get away from that and get all of the general cards from the expansions. You're missing out on the neutral cards whenever you do these ones. And there are more neutral cards. I think there's like 250 neutral cards than there are for any of the one faction. And you can use those neutral cards in any of your decks. And I'm going to show you a few of those neutral cards as important adds to your early deck or decks. Now remember, because they're neutral, you can add them to any of them. So let's pop open Deck Builder. We're going to come and I'm going to show you exactly what you want to do when you're first starting out. So I know I've told you guys how much I love Scoia'tael. We're actually going to, this is the Scoia'tael starter deck. I don't think that the cards I'm going to suggest actually pair best with Scoia'tael. I think instead they go really well with Northern Realms, monsters, or even Nilfgaard. Skellige is kind of hit or miss, but let's do Northern Realms because I really like them. So what you're going to do is you're going to hold down on the starter deck, and then you're going to go to this button here and just press duplicate deck. I think for your first deck, this is going to be the easiest thing to do. So once you have that duplicate, you're going to come into here and you're going to look at your deck. Now, there are filters here, and I would suggest the one filter that you should put on is this ownership. There is right here, you see all, new, owned, and unowned. Just go to the owned one. You don't really care about your new ones right now. You're not going to have very many cards when you first start off. I know you're going to look at mine and be like, oh, I'm seething with jealousy. These took me a long time to get. Some of them I got lucky enough to pull. Some of them I got because I built them. And then others, Ike being a really good example, I got because I did the Thronebreaker campaign on the Thronebreaker game. Totally fun. Really recommend it if you're looking. It's only $20 and you get a whole bunch of cards. It's kind of good bang for your buck just within the Gwent ecosystem. But if you want to kind of expand your view of the Witcher universe, I do recommend Thronebreaker. And this is not a sponsored post or anything. I think it's actually a really pretty quality game. It's not as engaging as Wild Hunt, but it is a little bit more, let's say, family friendly than Wild Hunt is. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to focus on adding these Witchers in to your deck, and then I also want you to come and I want you to build a card. And the best way to find this is you just go to the search bar and you're going to type it in. His name is Roach, and if you've played the games, you are very familiar with Roach. Roach, or if you've seen the show, Roach is Geralt's horse. Goes everywhere with him. They rely on each other. They are best buds, etc., etc. Roach is a fantastic card to add to your early decks, and here's why. I've talked to you guys a bit about having weeding cards in your decks. What those are going to do is they're going to pull cards out of your deck, and they're going to make it more likely for you to draw the cards that you want in later rounds. Roach is going to come out of your deck whenever you play any gold card. So it doesn't matter what card it is, he's going to come out of your deck and come to a random row. So he's going to weed a card out of your deck, and he's 3 points. So a lot of rounds, especially when you're in the early game, but also later on as well, there's going to be really tight scoring, and 3 points is going to be able to push you over the edge. So we're going to add Roach. Now, something else, when you're looking at deck building, you want to look at these 3 numbers on the top left. So this is how many cards you need to have in your deck. You have to have 25. You can go over, but I highly recommend staying as close to 25 as possible for the same reasons I like weeding cards. You want to keep your deck taut. You cannot have all of the best cards in the game in a deck. You have to mix them. And so keeping a taut deck where you can filter out some cards in an early round and weed down to your really good cards for the final round is a fantastic way to play. There are some other strategies you can use, but I think especially for you as a new player, playing against other people with reasonably comparable decks, this is a much better strategy for you. It also will help you work on synergy plays, and it'll give you more familiarity with how you can use certain cards to bounce off each other, right? So if you remember our Northern Realms deck, you're going to remember that the Trident Infantry is a perfect companion with both the Temerian Drummers as well as with Anna Stringer, right? So they boost Trident Infantry. Trident Infantry does damage. They're great engines. They keep you going. You don't even need to play in some of those final rounds to push yourself over the edge. So we're going to use those cards as much as we can in the right round. Now, if we get them early, great. But a lot of times we're not going to get them early because we don't have the greatest luck in the world, right? So we're going to use these weeding cards to help us get there. So we need to trim out the fat from this deck. So even though these Elder Bear cards are worth 6 points, they are worthless in my opinion. They are the first cards I would recommend getting out of here. Then I would also recommend getting at least one of Alzor's Thunders out of your deck. Having one around isn't so bad. They aren't the best cards to do damage, especially as you get into your own specialty decks for each of the cards. Bombardment is a really good example in Northern Realms, so I'll show that to you. Bombardment is going to split 4 damage randomly between all enemy units, and then it increases by 1 for each siege unit you own. So it has a little bit more, works a little bit better with Northern Realms specifically, since there's a lot of siege equipment. But I think keeping one around in the early game isn't a bad idea. I think of like Pavko Gale in Scoia'tael, Mahakam Defender in Scoia'tael, Harpy's Egg, Necker's Abaya, all in monsters. Those are great cards to just zap, get off the board, because they are great engines for the opposing team, and Alzor's Thunder will help keep them off in just one hit, right? So it doesn't add a whole lot to your deck. It has no synergy. It's a pure damage card, so I would get rid of one of those. Field Medics, I'm pretty, I don't love them, right? So what we're actually going to do is get rid of these Field Medics, and you'll see we're down to 24 cards. So this is not a deck that we can play with. We only have 9 points left, so we can fill in the gap, but I'm actually going to do something a little bit different, and I'm going to recommend one more card for you to add, okay? So we're up to those 3 cards that you got, Lambert, Vesemir, Eskel, and then I want you to get one more epic card, and you're going to come up here and you're going to type in Portal. Okay, Portal is a 13 provision cost card. It's pretty expensive. It's a relic, an artifact, and so it's going to play to the board. It's actually going to stick on the board. And what it's going to do is it's going to summon a random unit with 4 provision cost from my deck on both sides of the card. So we're just going to add that into our deck. Now you'll see we're 4 points over, so we need to trim something from our deck again, and then add something in that's a little bit cheaper. So I think good rule of thumb is always have a base of 4. That is what you're going to add back in. So we need to be able to delete something that's an 8 to add in a 4. But for this portal, I want the portal to work perfectly with my Trident Infantry, okay? So what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to change this up a little bit. Now I want to delete a higher card than an 8. I'm thinking probably a 9 or a 10. And in this case, Geralt of Rivia. If you've seen my gameplay videos, you'll see sometimes Geralt works great, sometimes he doesn't. And he is a gold card and he is a high provision cost, so we're going to get rid of him. And then what you can do, I am going to change my card sets here. You can ignore this part, but this is the starter set, so if you ever want to see or recommend something for a family or friend who's just starting, you can click on this to limit your cards down. And then I am going to look for a card that will still fit in here, okay? So we have 6 points left, and we want to have something that's higher than 4 and lower, equal to or lower than 6. So it looks like Elder Bear might be what we're stuck with here, or another of Alzor's Thunder. So I actually think in this case, because we already have one Alzor's Thunder, I'm unfortunately going to be stuck with another one of these Elder Bears. So not my favorite, but it is what we have been dealt today, and we will keep working on this deck and keep growing it. So as you can see, this is just this is kind of the first moves you'll make as a starter. You'll need a 400 of these scraps in order to make this work by buying Roach and buying Portal. But after you have that, you're going to be able to do some fun stuff. Okay, so we want to get out here and try this deck, but there's actually one more thing I want to change if I can. So you're going to see this is my leader ability. It boosts an allied Northern Realms unit by 1 and give it Zeal. I can use that 3 times. If you watch my Northern Realms intro video, I find that ability lackluster, let's say. So we're going to come here, we're going to click on that, and then we're going to press change ability. So you have to stay within Northern Realms, then you can choose any of these abilities, okay? So they, in the last few expansions, they've added a couple new abilities. Namely, Inspired Zeal is the one you start with. The other basic one is this Royal Inspiration. You get to boost a unit by 1, and it has a cooldown of 2. The basics are good to start off with, but I think you're ready to look into another card, one of these other options down here if you're interested. So Mobilization is going to play a copy of a unit from my deck, boost it by 2, and give it Zeal. That's going to allow me to play copy of a unit that's already out in play, boost it by 2, and then allow it to use its order right away. Now, I don't have a lot of order cards, so I don't recommend that one right up front. It does have its uses, though. Vicious Slash is going to damage an enemy unit by 8, and then if it does excess damage, it's going to give bleeding to that excess damage to the neighboring units. So if there's a unit with 4 points, I deal damage to it. It's going to give each of the neighboring units bleeding for 4 turns each. And bleeding means that they're going to take 1 damage at the end of each of their turns that many times. So if it's 4 bleeding, then it's going to happen for 4 turns, and you're going to see those numbers tick down each round. So bleeding is actually a really useful ability to have, and this can get you a lot of points. So like I just said, if it was 4 damage and then 4 on the sides, if you played that early enough in a round, that would end up being 4 damage to the main person, then 4 on each side would be 12 total damage that you're doing in 1 round. Now granted, this is a one-time use ability, so it's pretty good for a final play, and it works really well with Cadweni Revenants and Sahil and Bloody Flail. I don't really recommend it though for early on because you don't have any of those cards. Stockpile is a good card, works a lot with orders. Again, we don't have a lot of those with the charges. Pincer Maneuver is one of my favorites. Play Northern Realms faction card from your hand, then draw a card. But you're going to notice this 12 number here is going to limit how many units we can have in our deck, because right now we're at 15. And if you recall, we were pretty close on that total provision count that we had. That was of those 3 numbers, that was the one on the far right. And that was why we had to put Elder Bear back in here. So actually, I think I want a 16, and I want to swap out Elder Bear for Lacerate, that one that does 2 damage to each unit on a row. I think that's going to pair a lot better with this deck. So I'm thinking actually Royal Inspiration. It's a basic ability. and then it's going to boost an allied unit by 1. We can use that on Trident Infantry to make them do 1 damage at random and get a point. We can also use it on Anna Stringer to get her to be inspired, if you remember what that is. If she's boosted, then she doesn't just boost the one on the right, she also boosts the card on the left by 1 at the end of every turn. So I think Royal Inspiration is actually a better leader ability to start off with. So we're going to change that ability, and then we're going to come back down here. You see how we're back up to 1. We're going to remove Elder Bear, and then we are going to put in Lacerate. Boom, there we go. I like this deck a lot more, and you're gonna see how this deck plays when we get out there. So, something new that they just added to the game in this update that I do want to introduce you guys to. You can come to play, you can come to training now. This is against a computer, so it's not against a real person. For you guys, again, if you're just starting out, you're in ranks probably 28 to 30. Go ahead and use this deck in a ranked match. You have a pretty good chance of winning if you've watched my videos and you know how they work. So in this training though, I'm going to be able to play against lots of different factions now, not just monsters, and they're going to have their different abilities available. Okay, now if you've watched my other videos, you know that it's important to get the right weeding cards into your hand. We want to get rid of Roach because he needs to be in my deck in order to get played. So we're going to cycle him back in. And then also, this Blue Stripes Commando is copied. I want to make sure that I can summon the other one from the deck when I play the other one. So we're going to cycle him back in. Perfect. Now, the Trident Infantry are supposed to pair with that portal, but the portal's still in the deck, and we have both of the Trident Infantry. Now, that's not the worst thing in the world, and I'm going to describe why in the later round. Just know we don't want to play them right now. Alright, so he is Scoia'tael, and he is playing some cards that are a little bit better than what we've seen in some of the other videos. Scoia'tael Neophyte being the first one. He's going to play this guy, and he's going to spawn and summon a base copy to the other row. And then he also has Vernoisil's Commando, who's going to boost herself by 1 if Vernoisil is on the board, or if they only have elf units out. So these are both elves. You can see that by just underneath their name when you hover over them. Or when you hold and click, you can read their descriptions and see that it's elf right there as well. So that's a little bit worrisome to me. I don't want her to get so many points right off the bat. So what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to play my Dirogea Vol normally. But I want to show you guys my favorite move from this new deck we just made. So we're going to let her get 1 extra point, but I'm going to show you guys how Eskel, Lambert, and Vesemir pair excellently with Roach. Excuse me. Alright, you see when I played Eskel here, he pulled down Vesemir and Lambert, and they make a beautiful little picture, slaying those wild hunt curs, trying to take Ciri away from them. And then we also have Roach, who got pulled out from the deck. He could have come to this front row or the back row. Every time, though, Lambert, Vesemir, and Eskel will play in this order together as a group. So you need to make sure, if you're playing them to a row, that you have 3 spots available for them. Remember, 9 total units are allowed on the row, so count your units. Make sure there are 6 or fewer cards out there. This way, you can get all 3 of those cards out in a row and pulled from your deck. You'll notice we went from 15 all the way down to 12. We are in a great spot. I love where we are. Now, we can use this leader ability to boost one of our cards by 1, and I think that's what we're going to do right now. So, honestly, right here, I'm not super worried. Elves don't have treason like the Nilfgaard does to deal damage to the units on the side. And even if they did, it wouldn't make a huge difference because these are pretty low point cards. Alright, my suspicions were confirmed. He's using an Invigorate deck like the other Scoia'tael starter deck. He boosts all units in his hand by 1, but he is pure elves. You can tell by the fact that this Vryhead Vanguard boosts himself by 1 for each elf in his hand, and he has a base value of 1 and is now at 9. He has 8 cards in his hand. 1 plus 8 equals 9. So all of these cards in his hand are elves. So that's just something to be aware of with this Vernoisil's Commando, because that means he's not going to play something that's going to ruin that. So I want to get this Dirogea Vol out here and lock that Commando. Granted, he's my only lock, and there might have been some better cards to have used it on, but I feel pretty good about where that is right now. Alright, he is actually playing some pretty mean cards on us right now. Alright, so this is a pretty tough training deck. Training has gotten much harder than it was under that worthless monster deck. So if you want to come try stuff out and see how other decks work, I recommend getting into training. So, Isengrim Foliatarna is one of the best Scoia'tael deck cards that you can have, especially when you're running pure elves. He boosts all allied elf units by 1, and whenever you play an elf, boosts self by 1. Then Ailerin here, on turn to end, if you control 5 or more allied elf units, she's going to summon herself from the deck to the melee row. She's worth 5 points, and only an 8 provision cost card. Much better than Roach, but as you can see, she is legendary by the color in that top left. That means she's an 800, she costs you 800 of those shards that we used to make the other cards that were only 200 each. So she's quite an investment, and she can't be used in every deck like Roach, Vesemir, Eskel, and Lambert can be. So I still think this is what I would recommend for you as a starter. Just know that you could run into some tough sledding. So what we're going to do, we're going to finish out some of our weeding. I'm going to throw down this commando here. We're going to buff him up just to keep him from getting killed. And I think we're going to run a short round here. I don't foresee us being able to pull this back from down 33. Etheline Egley is also a phenomenal card. Alright, she is already boosted up by 1 because he used Invigorate, and she's going to boast a Scoia'tael unit in his hand by 4. Since they're all elves, they're all Scoia'tael units, so she could have boosted any of those of his choice up to up by 4. So something to pay attention to. Alright, we need to play one more card to finish out this round. We're going to pull in that commando. And then I'm going to show you guys how crew works. I've had a question about this, but crew is trigger this ability if this unit is between 2 soldiers. Blue Stripes Commando, you can read right here, he is a human and a soldier. We have them both together. So we're going to drop down our siege tower. Instead of waiting for the 3 vitality for over 3 rounds, he's going to boost himself up right there. That worked pretty well. Alright, he's playing his Dolbothana Archer. He's still boosting Isengrim. Isengrim is going to get a boost every turn he plays a card. So he would go up to 47 points next time if he played something. That's just too much tough sledding for me to go through. That's almost 20 points I would need to play. And I don't have any passive engines doing much for me right now. So let's go ahead and pass this. And we'll just go ahead and try to push this up through next round and then win it in the 3rd round. Now, I told you before that we really want to get that portal, and we also don't need to be super concerned about our Trident Infantry being in our hand. Now, you're going to say, well, why is that? Now, whenever you go through, this is called Mulligan, but whenever you go through your redraws or Mulligan, you are going to put your cards out on the side, and then they're going to go back underneath your deck, and they can be used, they can be redrawn at the end of the round when they're shuffled all back together, but you will not redraw them in that round. So we actually might want to hold on to these Trident Infantry so that we can try, if we get the portal, we'll be able to dump them off without worrying about redrawing them later on. And worst case scenario, we do have 2 drummers and Anna Strenger to work with them this round, so I'm not feeling too shabby about this. Alright, I think we're going to need 1 card to throw away. I wouldn't mind tossing Arbalist. Trebuchet as well would be a good one to get rid of. Let's stick with this. And we'll keep Lacerate. We'll put that back in. Oh, look at that. We got Portal. Perfect. So that's all set up for the final round. The question is, how hard is he going to try to push us this round? And it looks like he wants to be a mean green dude. So we are going to see if we can shut him down. We're going to use the Lyrian Arbalist here.
Give me a time.
We're going to boost him up by 1 just so he doesn't get killed right away. And if he goes down any further in cards, he is not going to be able to have 10 in the last round. So we just need to pay close attention to that. Alright, he has Etriel, great elf card. If he plays Morlega, which is a pretty decent card to play, it will ruin his elf synergy though. So that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to happen to us. We're going to play out this other Lyrian Obelisk. Then we're going to do 2 damage. We're going to just damage Merlega. His Vernasil Commando is going to just get away from us, and there's no reason trying to fight that too much right now. Alright, he's closed the point gap. We need to get enough points on the board to stay alive without losing it. So I think we're actually going to play Prince Stennis, and we're going to play him to the melee row so that he will boost 1 unit by 4 since we do not have 4 units. That way we can get the max bonuses here. And we are going to save our leader ability for the beginning of next turn. Go ahead and pass this. Alright, so the AI and this training program has worked pretty well. They used a good engine card, a good damage card. They kept the float pretty well, and now they have made it so we had to play an extra card that we wouldn't have otherwise had to play. I like what they've done. They're playing much smarter now than they used to. The AI has significantly improved. Okay, Thunderbolt would be a pretty good card to have. But I really don't want to have to get Ronvid, and Last Rite would be okay to have as well. So we're going to toss this Trebuchet in. Thunderbolt is great. I think Alzor's Thunder would be good, and I totally ruined this by being a moron. We needed to dump our Tridem Infantry. Had we done that, then it would have pulled each of them from the deck on both sides of this portal. Since we didn't do that, like the moron I am, instead we're going to have to get rid of Portal, toss it back in. Otherwise, it's just going to be a wasted card. So the reason I say that is because I just have 2 Tridem Infantry. If I had put 1 back in, it would have played Portal, pulled 1 Tridem Infantry on the side, and then I'd have to just play the other Tridem Infantry. That's 2 card plays for those 2 cards. The Portal is otherwise useless. There's nothing on our cards that relies on a total number of cards in a row. If you are doing Portals, it can be helpful with like the Great Oak, one of the best cards in the game. That card does damage or boosts itself by the total number of cards in a row, so that can be useful for that purpose. So just something to keep in mind. Alright, he doesn't have anything out, so using this leader ability to boost a Tridem Infantry isn't going to do me much good. I think a good frame of reference here, Siege Tower would be a helpful thing to get out and get the Vitality going, but that's over 3 turns. So instead, let's just throw out Thunderbolt. Most decks do not have an artifact destroying card in them. If it does, though, then we lose Thunderbolt, and that would be unfortunate, but not a lot we can do. Alright, so this is why we kept Elzor's Thunder around. This is a 4-point card, but remember, he's playing Pure Elves. We know this wasn't in his original hand because it's not boosted from that Invigorate, so I actually want to get rid of that card. I do not want that elf dancing around doing damage to me and ruining especially Anna Stringer's day, because she gets that boost on the other side of her whenever she's inspired. Feel even better about that decision now, knowing that he had 1 more elf in his hand already. So we are going to play out this Tridem Infantry. We're going to boost him natively by 1 right here. And then we're going to boost him again with Thunderbolt, just in case he has Alzor's Thunder. That did 2 specific damage to that Elven Swordmaster because the random damage only had 1 place to go. So that worked out pretty well for us. Alright.
I never miss.
Alright, let's get out this Temerian Drummer.
Again.
And we're going to save this boost. Play a little bit later on when things get hairy. And they just did. Alright. He used, remember how I told you about how he used Merlega in an earlier round? Or, sorry, Etriel, and he did not want to use Merlega because that would ruin the Elven Commando. So that worked out well for him to save it for this later round, and this worked out well for him to save that attack from that Elven Swordmaster because of what he was just able to do. But we still have another drummer, so we're going to use him. We're going to boost up Tridem. He's going to do 1 random damage, and we're just going to get back at it. Alright, Yavin is pretty good. He's going to do damage by the number of elves in his row, which gave him 3 damage, and then that... Oh, sorry, one thing to note here. So, on order abilities, it is going to... if you can use them again, it will say a cooldown, and then sometimes it gives some specified language for how that cooldown can be reduced. So you see here, whenever you play an elf, reduce cooldown by 1. So she was getting, every turn, she was able to that he plays an elf, this Elven Swordmaster is going to be able to use its attack every turn instead of every other turn because of those elves. So that's why using some synergy cards can be really useful. So Anna Stringer still needs to be inspired in order to boost cards on each side of her, and he keeps doing damage to me. So we're going to get out that Thunderbolt. Glad we played it down early so we could use it just like in a scenario just like this. But he is still boosting cards in his hand with that Brighthead Saboteur. So we want to get our Trident Infantry out here.
To arms!
We're going to boost him up. Now we get to do 2 random damage, and let's just pray one of those hit that Elven Swordmaster, and it did. So she is gone. We are now on to a deeper phase of this game. Alright. See who he moves. Oh, he moved his own character. I'm not sure why he did that. Might be gearing up for another play. Let's get Siege Tower out here because it is not going to be played between 2 units, so it's going to instead be getting that vitality over 3 rounds. We want to make sure it has time to do that, at least for a couple of those. And we'll save Neneke for our final play. Ooh, Vernosil is one of my favorite cards. She has some great flexibility. You can use her to spawn 2 of those Elven Deadeyes. She's a base of 5. Those 2 Deadeyes are going to give you 5 plus 3 plus 3 is 11. Alternatively, if you can spawn other Deadeyes, Half Elf Hunter is a good example. Elias, the Elven Deadeye Leader ability lets you spawn 3. Then she will deal Elven Deadeyes will damage a random enemy by 2. That's for each one. So if you had like 5 of them, then she will do 2 random damage 5 times for a total of 10 damage. So she can be a really brutal card to use, especially as a final play. So knowing that she played that now, I'm a little bit worried about what his last play will be. But we're going to use our leader ability to boost this Trident Infantry. We're going to play Neneke here and boost these Trident Infantry back up as well. Keep them somewhat close together and score just in case he plays Geralt, for example. But yeah, so here you go. So Elias would have been a good card to have played to consume a 1-point card, get those Deadeyes, and then she could have done 2 damage each. But instead, I think the total number of points she got from that earlier play was a good option as well. So there you go. That's how you can take these out for a spin. Use this new training mode without worrying about time limits as well as another benefit about the training mode. So you can have plenty of time to read your cards. But this is, like I said, an introduction to how you can build decks by starting with a copy of one of your starter decks, adding in a few cards to give you some more flexibility, get you some more points, help you get those synergy cards together at the end of the game. Like you saw, my dream for Northern Realms is to use those Trident Infantry with the Temerian Drummers and Anna Stringer. That worked out great. They killed both of my drummers, but we still had Anna Stringer. Had we not had those together and instead had Elder Bear in our hand instead of Anna Stringer, we would not have won that round. No way, no how. I mean, you think about how many, I think there's 5 rounds that went by with Anna Stringer boosting both of them. That's 10 points in boost and 10 points in damage. That's 20 net points we would have missed out on. That's how important weeding cards like Eskel, Lambert, and Vesemir and Roach can be. And as you saw, if that's not enough for you, it's a 2-point card you're playing down that gives you a 9-point play all at once. So it's an excellent card for you guys. Those 3 Witcher cards as well as Roach, those are all excellent cards for you guys to get. Again, go to the reward tree, get those Witchers, then build that Roach, build Portal, and use it correctly, not like me. And you will have some great fun times going out there, getting some wins, and making sure that you're getting those right synergy cards together, and that will make the game infinitely more fun. So I think this is pretty close to wrapping up my beginners videos. I'm going to do one last one to talk about some things that you should be aware of, some things not to do as a beginner, as it were. And as you do that, after we finish out this beginner video, we're going to move into our intermediate series. So if you have thoughts or questions or something that you got hung up on, please let me know. If you like this video, please leave a like, subscribe. It really helps my channel. And get out there and go Gwenting.